Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Designated Pundits. Today, 2025 Major League Soccer season preview for St. Louis City SC. You know what we're doing, all 30 teams. We have 30 episodes coming at you to preview each and every one with special guests from around Major League Soccer, some of the best podcasters, radio hosts, everything you need to know for the 2025 season coming right up around the corner. And if you are checking us out for the first time, make sure you hit that bell icon, hit that subscribe so that you can get updated every time we go live with each and every Major League Soccer team. And then once the season starts, we do a Monday night recap and Thursday predictions, focusing on some sports betting. I'm Bob Ventimiglia. I'll be your host for today. And we have a special guest host, Dion, a.k.a. Nerdy Soccer Guy, filling in for some of the guys who, it's a Monday night. We all have work to do. So thank you, Dion, for filling in. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
And we have Justin Graham here from Ball Watching, a St. Louis City SC podcast. Thank you for making the trip to be here with us today, the virtual trip for being here with us today. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it was a long trek to get here, but I'm happy we could all meet up and excited to talk a little St. Louis City SC.
Let us know where we can find your work.
Yeah, if you go just underneath the handle on Instagram or Twitter at Ball Watching STL. So you can find us on there. You can also find us on, I said Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast as well. We try to keep it pretty lighthearted and also kind of what you need to get to know out of St. Louis. And then throughout the year, U.S. men's national team stuff and things like that.
Lighthearted is definitely what we need. I keep telling myself, less politics, more soccer. I don't need to keep blowing up my own feed today. So we'll stick with that. The way we're starting each and every episode this week is I'm asking everyone what your favorite soccer moment from 2024 was. Dion, since you are our guest today, also, I'm going to shoot that over to you first. Favorite soccer moment 2024?
For me, I would have to say when Atlanta took down Inter Miami. I'm an Atlanta fan. I have to say when they knocked Miami out of the playoffs is my favorite moment of 2024.
Not bad. Dion, what about you? What is your favorite moment 2024?
Yeah, I would say it's hard to pick, especially with St. Louis having a little bit of an off year. But honestly, it's really just going back to, and I'll even say that every home game that we have there, I think the atmosphere is something that you see in St. Louis, and they talk about it on Apple. It's electric. So honestly, not a whole lot of soccer individual moments. I think the best goal of the year was Joao Klaus actually bullying Sporting Kansas City and then Celio Pompeo putting it away. But just generally guys being back at soccer or at now Energizer Park and just being there with everybody.
Okay, so let's get right into a quick recap of what happened last year. 2024 for St. Louis City. 8-13-13 record, 50 goals scored, 63 goals against. That left you with a minus 13 goal differential. However, you were slightly better at home, 7-5-5 with a winning record, 1-8-8 on the road. You had a 4-2-3 run to end the season. You found a little bit of form there. And we don't have a ton of ingoing, outgoing players because St. Louis City was one of the few Major League Soccer teams who really used last year's summer transfer window as the kind of main point. So, it's a quick recap. Wasn't a great season, but there were some positives to take away. Justin, how do you feel 2024?
Yeah, so honestly, you kind of have to take it into two parts, and that summer window, and you kind of mentioned it there that we ended up 4-2-3 run to end the season. It wasn't just the summer window as well. We had a coaching change. So relieved Bradley Carnell of his duties, and we brought in John Hackworth. And so when I say brought in, he's been with the club since inception, worked his way up through City 2, was the main assistant coach there. And then honestly, I think it was a big locker room shift. I think there was some issues that we were seeing in there with Bradley Carnell, and I think he kind of lost the locker room. Was it transfers? Was it playing time? Things of that nature. I think John Hackworth, if you guys see any interviews with him, he's a guy that everybody across the league loves, has a strong history as well. And then when you talk about that, also the major summer transfers, I know you have another slide on this as well. Cedric Toyshirt, Simon Betcher, and Marcel Hartel. Those three guys coming in absolutely changed the game for us. And we finished the season strong. And I think it wasn't just what we kind of showed on the field, but you could really see it, the joy in the guys coming out of the locker room and being a part on their social media. And you just kind of saw them starting to click there, and which is not easy when you have a mid-season coaching change and a couple newcomers. But I was glad to see them turn it around in the last, 7 or I guess that would be 9 games.
Absolutely. Dion, what do you think about St. Louis City last year? Very interesting club to watch, a little unpredictable.
Yeah, I mean, I had high expectations for him from their first season. That was a great season for their first season, and I really thought that they were going to do well. But like Justin said, whenever the manager started losing the locker room, like out of nowhere, Tim Parker gets transferred, and I don't know what all went on there, to be honest. But yeah, when things started going that way, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and I'm glad that they finished the season strong at the end there, though.
Yeah, definitely had a major slump in the middle of the season. Let's turn the page. I'm sure that's something you'd most like to do, Justin. And, we'll talk about some contributors. You had Klaus, 5 goals, 3 assists. Edouard Leuven, 5 goals, 2 assists. Then you had Cedric Teucher, 5 goals, 4 assists, and I put that he played only 8.490s. So he played the equivalent of a full game 8.4 times for the team. Those stats look much, much better considering that. Then you had Betcher, 4 goals, no assists, but that's in only 6.190s. Also a pretty good stat line. And Hartel, 3 goals, 5 assists in only 990s. So you had your 3 of your 5 biggest contributors available only for a short amount of time. Klaus missed some time too with an injury. Leuven had missed some, I believe it was some with some personal time, missed about a month and a half of play there. So you did not have your best players. 3 of them because they have not been with the club yet, and 2 who were battling availability issues. Talk to us about the 2024 contributors.
Yeah, so I would say maybe just starting with the original guys here, like you already mentioned, Klaus and Leuven. I think it was tough to miss Klaus for that long stretch of the season. I think that was an injury that kept nagging, and they tried to bring him back, and then it would kind of flare back up again. So that was a tough one. Leuven, completely separate issue. Without giving too much into detail, it's a very personal issue for him, but his wife was actually diagnosed with brain cancer. And so something that the team really appreciated and really felt that he needed to take time away. And if we did an interview with him, I think it gives me the chills when I think about it. This guy, that he carries himself and the way that he carries the team as well. So that was a tougher part for him to step away. But like you said, with Cedric Teuchert, Simon Betcher, and Hartel coming in, it was an insane, just automatic click for those guys. And I would say that also, it wasn't just their specific stats that you saw getting better. You could see Klaus was getting more chances. He was creating more space, and you could see the guys just moving the ball better. More specifically, though, that you mentioned on how well they contributed, just looking at the goals and assists per 90 for them. So if you looked at Teuchert and Hartel, they had a goal or an assist every 84 minutes for Teuchert and 81 minutes for Hartel. That was by far and away the leaders of the team. Following up from them is Simon Betcher every 138 minutes. After that, Joao Klaus, even though he had 8 goal contributions in the season, that was one every 246 minutes that he had. So he had a goal. What would that be? Almost 3 full games, a goal or an assist for him. So the guys that we brought in the summer transfer window, huge uplift for us. And I will say one other guy that I absolutely loved, and we actually had at our charity event in December, Celio Pompeo, absolute spark plug. Unfortunately went down and had a fractured fibula and a dislocated ankle early in the season as well. He had 2 goals in our first 2 games, and that's a guy that I'm extremely excited to have back for this upcoming season.
Awesome. Let's talk briefly about some of the incoming, outgoing transfers. Again, we said that the big transfer window with you was for the summer, so you guys are almost like on that European model. Big surprise. I thought the season was over. Hey, let's limp across the finish line, set for the season. They were probably the most aggressive team through the second half of the season. And Dion, could you run us through these incoming, outgoing transfers?
Yeah, so the outgoing transfers, you got Klein, Nowicki, Thorson, Pedro. Is that how you say that? Pedro.
Yep.
And then incoming, you got Timo, and then Wallum coming in. I
Yes.
would butcher that last name, so I'm not even going to try it.
I
No,
would say,
you're
like,
good.
Baumgartel, and that kind of leans me to a more specific question, which is, you guys, what is the German influence that I did not know? Is that a St. Louis thing, or is there like another connection there? Because I saw 4 or 5 of these guys were on like the 2016, 2017 under 21 team. I think it was like Hartel, Leuven. There was another one on there somewhere. Baumgartel,
Yep.
and I'm sure I'll pick up the other one sometime. There was a 5th or 6th there somewhere. Maybe Berkey or something. They're all connected to each other somewhere. Is that intentional for a German audience, or is that just getting the right guys at the right time?
I think it's more of the connection that our sporting director, Luke Svanensteel, has overseas. You guys will kind of notice it. It's actually kind of, when I first found out that we were going to have Lutz, I was ecstatic, because if you watch, he is over there announcing on Fox Sports, doing the games for whenever Bayern plays against Dortmund, and going against some of these larger games, he's actually announcing them as well. So the connections that he has through and through into the European leagues is where you're kind of finding these diamonds in the rough. And I would say, especially like Hartel and Teuscher coming over there, it's a lot of Bundesliga or second league Bundesliga teams that we're ending up signing these guys from. So it's ones where, yeah, you're not always going to see that. It's not going to be the shining star that's trying to move to the dead center of America. We're not the ones in the Neymar, the Messi, and those conversations. So I think Lutz is doing a great job and kind of figuring out what connections he has over in Europe and kind of finagling different aspects for up and coming guys, or guys that are still producing at a very high rate just below that first Bundesliga league. And that's the main connection there is Lutz.
Awesome. So the last guy was Giannis Horn, was on that team with those guys. That was a really, really impressive squad there. So we can talk a little bit about a proposed depth chart, but it's going to be maybe a little different than what we had last year. Last year, kind of a 4-4-2, 4-2-2-2 kind of formation. But now with the addition of Timo, it looks like you guys have at least 4 really, really high-end center backs with Nielsen, Kessler, Yarrow. We think that they might be going to a 5 or a 3-man back line. Can you talk about that transformation a little bit?
Yeah, I would agree with that. So when you kind of think about it, in one, I want to caveat Nielsen, extremely strong center back. However, he's essentially made of glass. I think from a minutes perspective, I would go back and look, but he was struggling to keep him healthy all season. So would really love to see in the offseason just kind of build up his health there. But I would agree. I think what we're really going to start looking at, you kind of have it set up here. And I don't know if Baumgartel will actually start. So I think the way that we're thinking about it is more of a back 3 center backs with 2 wides that kind of get up and down when you think about them. So thinking about from left to right, you go Wallem, and then Horn, Nielsen, Kessler, and Totland. So using Wallem and Totland to get up and down the sidelines, with Nielsen being that centerpiece there. And Kessler and Horn, I think with their own rights, can have a little bit of a skill to be able to play almost like a winger when we're playing with 3 in the back, but also very strong center backs there. And then sitting in front of them, would that be Leuven and Durkin? I think Durkin was a great addition to us in this past season from DC. He's kind of that workhorse that kind of just sits and holds in front of the back 4. And I think that then gives Leuven a little bit more freedom to really take the ball, bring it upfield, and Leuven can absolutely ping the ball as well. So giving him a little bit more freedom where you would see Durkin get stuck in, Leuven take the ball forward and then find an outlet pass into the guys in front of him, who would then be Hartel, Teuscher, and Klaus. I think those are the guys, depending on how you want to look at it, you can have it more be like a 3-4-1-2, or we've kind of played around with it as well to where sometimes you play Klaus up top with 3 underneath of him and you go Teuscher, Hartel, and then there's those guys coming off the bench where I think we are extremely deep now when you think about Simon Betcher. You look at Celio Pompeo, Rasmus Alm is going to be coming in healthy again this year. And just a couple of those guys, Indiana Vasilev, currently with the U.S. men's national team, just got some minutes against Venezuela. So I think we have a lot of guys that can rotate, and Thomas Ostrak that can kind of fill in that one winger role. And I think you guys, we have kind of, I want to say it was a record of the amount of different starting 11s we had in the past year. I do think we're going to see a lot of rotation again this year, just because there are so many of those moving parts, but I would like to see a little bit more consistency as we move forward.
So run it back one more time. We know the center backs. Who would the wingers in a 5-man back line be? Because I saw some suggestions that Wallem was going to be one of those guys and Totland the other. Is that how you think that's going to go down?
Yeah, so on the graphic that you have up, I would essentially pull Timo off the field, and you slide in Horn a little bit with Kessler, and you'd have Kessler, Horn, and Nilsson as the three center backs, and then Totland as your right back, and Wallum as your left back. And I think that's where, if we are going to go five in the back, that's where we would go. Just knowing how Wallum and Totland can get up and down the field there, I think that's a possibility there. If we're going three in the back, if we're going just straight four in the back, I think kind of how you have it set up here could possibly be it. I would probably take Timo Baumgartner out for Nilsson, depending on from a depth chart perspective. But then Totland for sure on the right. Wallum, I think, could go on the left side because I really do think that you're going to leave the Leuven and Durkin duo there. I do think that it worked really well. I think Durkin kind of came in and filled in very quickly for Njomala Bloom, who we still have out on loan in South Africa.
Great. That still leaves a few attackers, three to be precise. Now, Klaus, Tuchert, Hartel, they're kind of all just interchangeable names for me. Can you break down what characteristics each one has? Is there some that we're looking at more as a 10? Is there, the set striker pair, Klaus and Tuchert with Hartel in the middle? Is that how you guys are seeing it?
Yeah, so honestly, it's going to be different this season. How we saw it a lot last season when we would have three below Klaus. So Klaus would be our lone striker up top, and we'd have Tuchert on the left, Hartel in the middle, and then on that right side where you see that interchangeable with Betcher or Alm or Ostrak or Indy coming in. And so that's how it's been set up. I'm very intrigued on what Olaf, the new manager, is kind of going to work with here, especially in the preseason, because Klaus can be a sole striker. I think you can kind of see from his goal output that he's not always the finisher, but I do think with his size, he's be able to hold up the ball, take defenders with him that create space for a Tuchert running in behind or a Hartel as well. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know how well Klaus will do if we do two up top. I do see him more of a lone striker and kind of moves on side to side depending where he wants to float around to. But a lot of possibilities with the number of strikers and wingers that we have coming in.
Dion, anything?
Yeah, Justin, who do you think, who are you most excited to see this year with this team?
I'm extremely excited for Marcel Hartel. I think that just a little bit that we saw in just how quickly he was able to change the game for us. For me, that's the number one guy for me. And then obviously I think it's something that we have yet to talk about just because, it's such a mainstay, is Roman Berkey. This is technically his last contract or his last year in the contract with the team. So this is one that I really hope that the defense shores up because you could see the frustration on Berkey's face this year. Like, obviously, Roman Berkey is not the type of keeper that would give up 63 goals in a season. So honestly, he kept us in a lot of games. He had a few mistakes here or there, but overly, it was just more on the defense. And I would really like to see that shored up because I would like to see him a little bit more happy, for a lack of a better term, going into the season and throughout the season, because would love for him to stick around.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the next graphic here. 2025 storylines to watch. And this is my first one. Can they settle into an everyday starting 11? You say that is not what they did last year. Of course, Major League Soccer, we have a lot of matches, but the best teams have like for like substitutions. They have some similarity week in and week out. It's kind of like in the NFL when you hear like, oh, we're just going to go with that hot hand. That's code for you don't have anything worth putting on the field. As your team gets better, they need to find an identity and roll with it week in and week out, whether or not the perfect 11 are injured, while a lot of great coaches can change formation when they're missing a superstar or something like that. You don't want to have to, someone's hurt now, we're going to go back to a four-man back. We're making huge changes to the roster. So that's kind of my first starting question. And with a new coach, maybe we don't really know.
Yeah, I would say right now it's kind of up in the air. I will say it, obviously, with a new coach, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a couple different starting 11s, especially to start the season, as he's trying to figure out where everybody fits. I mean, you can only do so much in a preseason, and him just being here just under a month right now. So I would say to start the season, I would expect a little bit of rotation as well. But like I said, I would like to see at least a consistency from, obviously, we're going to have Berkey, but then the back four, back five, and the two in front of them. I would like to see that hold. And then the biggest question for me is, can someone really be that mainstay winger where we've had a lot of rotation with Indy, Celio, Alm, Ostrak, all of these guys, Simon Betcher? Can someone come in and just own that spot and have a consistent starting 11?
Next one, you had a 15-game span where you had only one win in the middle of the season. So my question here is going to be, can they continue momentum from the end of 2024? You started all right. No one had any idea what this team was going to come out with. 1 win, 4 draws, didn't have your first loss until March 31st, was looking pretty good, and then it seemed like everything fell apart. So do you think that with the additions that were made, and that would be kind of my opinion, you don't need to worry about chemistry as much because so many of your pieces had already played a few matches? And a lot of teams, that we do predictions, it's very hard to predict teams that go out and they get 4 new transfers in the winter. But you guys have already had a few games together. Do you think that that's going to give you a step up on some of these other teams?
I do. Like I said earlier, I do think that the locker room had a nice shift in the second half of the season. So you add that with the players and how quickly we were able to gel. I do think that can carry into the season. I would love to see it go that way because, like you said, we finished the season with, I believe it was 13 ties. Yeah, I appreciate getting a point here and there, but the majority of those fellas were ones where we just dropped the ball. We should have had wins. And you can see that in the stat for points lost throughout the season. And so I'd really appreciate us being able to close out some games. I think that'll be a big thing for this team. If you can get on the board, you got to put these teams to bed and not let them get back into it. Even if it's right before the half ends, you got to close out the half and then close out the second half. So long story short, I do think that we can carry some momentum into it, but it's definitely not going to be easy, as we've seen. Had a wonderful first season and then absolutely tanked down to 12th in the West in the second season. So hopefully we can keep the momentum going.
Deanna, I think it'd be interesting to go through this schedule and just kind of take a look at what we have to start the season. So I'm going to just name the squad, and Deanna, I want you to tell us if you think St. Louis can take that match. Opening day, February 22nd, home against Colorado.
Potentially they could. I think they could at home. I think it's hard. It's hard to play it in Energizer Stadium. Is that what it's called now? Or Park?
Yep. Park.
So I think that they could get the job done there.
Away at San Diego after.
That's hard to say because we don't know. Well, right now I don't feel like San Diego's roster is very strong.
Yes.
So I think that they could go on the road and maybe get a dub there, but they're so new, we don't know what we're even going to look at that point.
2 wins off the bat. Then they're away at Galaxy. I think they're going to get trounced in that one. Then they are home against Seattle. I think that is a very good test of the offense. Seattle's a great defense. That could be a really good test there. But then at Philadelphia, that's a tricky one.
The one thing I would also say for at Philadelphia as well, and that's Bradley Cardinal's new home. So that will be a homecoming essentially for us to go play him as well. So that'll be a tricky one as well.
Hosting Austin and then away at Sporting KC. You guys can get a good 4-2 start, and I think that this team could hit the ground running. So I think that's going to be a yes there, a pretty astounding yes. Keep going with the momentum against teams who, they do these summer warm-ups and stuff, but you don't really know until the first week of the season. Kind of goes to my next one. How does playing in the West change your approach during the season, and what can you guys do to have a better away record? You guys only had 1 win. I think it was 8 losses, 8 draws on the road. And part of that is the difficulty of being in the Western Conference, although you are I wouldn't say East Coast, but a pretty Eastern team.
Yeah, I think it's tough. You talked about it already. We're opening up at home against Colorado, but then we go to LA we'll go out there to San Diego on March 1st. And then I guess we would probably just stay out there and be at LA for the 9th. I don't know. That's what gets tricky with this travel. Being in St. Louis, I don't know what that flight is. I just know from here, just to drive to Colorado is a 12-hour drive. So the flight just getting to LA is probably a good 3 or 4 hours. So it does create a lot of travel. And we kind of talked about that with Leuven and a couple of the other guys we've interviewed, that it does put some wear and tear on these guys. You think about them coming overseas, playing in Europe, playing in Germany. The longest travel they have is like an hour and a half at most. So now they're staying on the road for a week at a time. But how does it change our approach, and what can we do better this year? I really do think that with the change in mentality that we have in the locker room, with the new head coach and the guys that are in here, winning is just, obviously, if you are able to create results, the locker room stays a little bit happier. So I think the main thing here is just making sure that we don't turn in on each other. I think if we're going through rough spells, we need to kind of figure it out, because last year I think we really saw a decline in the mentality of the players. So as long as we're able to keep some results early on, and we're not going to be like, oh boy, we're going down this road again, I think we'll be able to pull out a lot more wins, knock on wood, than what we did in in last season because it's not that hard to get more than one win on the road.
We're going to jump into predictions soon. Dion, do you have any questions before we kind of wrap it up here?
No, I don't think so. I know that, what's nice is the guys that you guys did do the summer transfer. I think that getting used to at the end of that last season, getting used to the travel, because we hear that a lot. Players talk about that a lot. Like when they first come to MLS, that travel does wear and tear on you. So that's nice. Like for those guys that came in, I think that it'll be good this season that they've already got a little bit of taste of that for the most part.
I agree. It's definitely, difficult for each team coming over. Let me just pull up the standings from last year, and we're going to hit, some final questions here and some predictions. I want to know what is a realistic outcome, what's your best possible outcome, and what's your worst possible outcome?
All right, so realistic outcome, I would say that we can realistically be in that 5 to 7 range, to where we would be making the playoffs, but we would not have home field advantage. I think that's kind of where I would expect this team to sit. Obviously, worst possible outcome is not making the playoffs again, which in my opinion should not even be an option with this team. I think, yes, we got, I wouldn't say lucky, but we were spoiled in the first season, getting first overall in the West, and then obviously dropping back down here. I think we find that middle ground, and I don't think that we missed the playoffs. I think best possible outcome, I don't see us winning the West by any means. If you look at some of these teams, LAFC, LA Galaxy, Seattle's made a lot of moves. You've seen a lot of teams. I mean, Austin just spent $80 million in the transfer window. So it's going to be a very exciting season in the West here. But I would say best possible outcome, maybe sneaking into that 3rd or 4th overall spot and getting home field advantage. I'm nowhere near. Am I going to say the best? I mean, obviously the best possible outcome is winning the cup. But my overall expectation of this season would be, one, to make the playoffs and then win a playoff series. That is something we have yet to do. So last year, or 2 years ago, we made the playoffs. We lost to Kansas City in the first round. I would just like for this team to at least make the playoffs and then move on to the next round.
I agree. I think it's most likely that 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 spot. I think you're still going to be playing soccer on decision day this year, but I don't think that's something to kind of look down on. I mean, you did finish first in the West 2 years ago, but it was a 5-game win streak to start your time in Major League Soccer, and then just coasting 500 after that, and that's all you needed to win the West 2 years ago. I don't think it's going to be quite as easy this time. I do see some teams moving up and some other teams moving down. Seattle was ahead of you, but I think that they are going to be, much closer in the race. But there were some teams that did not improve themselves, that did not get any better. So I think St. Louis City, if you can be 7, 8, or 9, that's realistic. 5 or 6 is best possible outcome. I don't think a home playoff game is in the run for you guys. And worst, I mean, we would have to have some major injuries, or like a Berkey's not happy and gets sold somewhere, and then maybe, you're back in the 11th or 12th spot. Dion, what do you think for this season?
Yeah, I'm thinking that, realistically, I would say, 5, 6, 7. I think I agree with you on that one, Justin. 5, 6, or 7. But realistic, best case scenario, I think 4. I think that 4th. I don't know who that 3rd team might be, but yeah, your LA teams in Seattle, I think those are going to be your top 3 in the West. And then worst outcome, let's hope that it's not at the bottom of the table. Let's hope not, because I don't want it to be for you all. But I would say, worst case is missing the playoffs. But I don't think, like you guys said, with what you guys brought in, I think you make the playoffs no matter what, unless something major happens.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the realistic worst case of fighting for a playoff spot on decision day. That's what I'm going to go with. I think I don't want to get to obviously there's much worse that can happen, but I would like to at least still be fighting for it at a worst case scenario on decision day.
And my kind of final question here is, what is one storyline that impacts St. Louis City's season the most? You saw Red Bull were fantastic all through the first half of last season. Once Emil Forsberg went down, the team fell apart. They weren't able to, rejuvenate themselves. And at the end, they switched to a 3-man back line, 5-man back line, whichever way you like to see it. And they got back on track again. So what is the storyline? What is something that we need to watch that's going to impact St. Louis City's season the most?
I would say they're probably in tandem here when we talk about one, the newcomers, obviously with how quickly they had an impact for us last season, but two, that will then come onto the field and needs to be able to help what I mentioned earlier on closing out games. If we look at this, I do not want to be anywhere near that top five where you would see a bunch of people tweeting about the points that we lost where we had a lead and then ended up getting a tie or a loss. I would like to be able to close out these games. And I think with the experience of the newcomers, when you think about Toy Shirt, Hartel, more specifically with their experience there, but then you throw in a Kessler and you throw in a Giannis Horn, and we have Berkey in the back, and you have Klaus that's now had 2 seasons of MLS underneath of his legs. So I would really like to see this team close out games and not drop points.
Love it. Dion, anything else?
Yeah. So what do you think? What kind of season do you think Klaus is going to have? Do you think that it's going to be a repeat of 2023 with 10 plus goals, or what was 10 plus goal contributions? Or do you think it's going to be more like 2024 where he only has a handful because of all of the new people you all brought in? Or is it going to be something in the middle?
Yeah, I think it'll be a little bit more of what we saw on the end here, where we're not going to having to be we're not going to have to rely on him as much to be that goal scorer. I do think that you'll see his assists uptick because now he has those guys that he knows that. I mean, Leuven said in the interview, now that we have Toy Shirt and Hartel, you have guys that you can just absolutely ping a ball into and they can handle it. And I think now Joao Klaus can kind of realize that. And so I do think that we've had a lot of people in St. Louis kind of saying, like, is Klaus really the guy for us? Is he here? I think for him to flourish this year, he's going to have to do a lot off the ball, and it might not show specifically straight to the stat sheet that you see in the MLS website, but I think you're going to see it as he's making runs. He's creating space where others that then have that technical ability to finish and create runs will kind of do that for him. So I do think that he's going to be more of a team player this year. I'm not expecting a breakout season for him from a goal contributions perspective. However, one last fact that I would like to change on this team, we are the only team in the MLS not to have at least one person on the team score 7 goals. We had 4 guys at 5 goals. So I would kind of like to see someone step up. If he's not going to be that guy, I don't know who it's going to be. I think we have a couple of options, but I would like to see someone really take the reins and bring that home.
Love it. Justin Graham from Ball Watching, St. Louis City SC. That is a mouthful podcast. Let us know one more time where we can find all your work.
Yep. If you go to X or Instagram at BallWatchingSTL, you can also find us on Facebook or anywhere you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere, Prime. So check us out. We appreciate it. And thank you guys very much for having me on.
Of course, anytime. Dion, one more time for you too. Where can we find your work this season?
Pretty much the same thing. Nerdy Soccer Guy on everything. Instagram, it is Nerdy Soccer Guy 32, but everywhere else it's just Nerdy Soccer Guy.
Love it, guys. Thank you for joining us. 27 more team previews to go. We're going to be busy over the next month and a half, but we'd love having you on. Great show. And everyone, thank you for hopping in and taking a view. Remember, the Designated Pundits on every podcast platform here on YouTube, live every Monday, Thursday night. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful week.